Welcome everyone to my lecture recital. Today I will be speaking about commissions for the performing artist and the student. And I will be featuring compositions by the composer Emma Lou Diemer and Anthony Green. So some people may not have been involved in a commission project before. So what you need to do in the beginning is just find a composer that you're interested in commissioning a work from. And obviously you need to talk with them and find out if they're willing to write a piece for you. And then after that, you wanted to discuss with the composer what type of piece you would like to have composed. They may have certain ideas for you, or you may have something that you need, like a specific time amount or a specific style for an occasion. So, and following when they've composed the piece for you, you have to consult with, or you should consult with the composer on the interpretation. It's recommended because how many of us get to talk with a composer about a piece that we're working on? Not very often, so do we get to do that? So that's a really important piece there. And then you want to be consulting with the composer on the interpretation along the way. So if you live in the same area, you can meet with them, play the piece for them along the way, like see if they're liking what you've been doing, and just maybe you could send them a video if you live out of state, so, or out of the country. And then finally you want to discuss with them about the premiere and where you'll be having it and when, and make sure that it all is agreeable with them. So the first composer that I'm going to be talking about is Emma Lou Diemer. I did a lecture recital on her only in 2011, and I met with her in Santa Barbara. That's a photo of the two of us at her house in Santa Barbara. Yeah, quite a few years ago. They look a bit different. So just a little background on Emma Lou Diemer. She was born November 24th, 1927 in Kansas City, Missouri. She came from a very musical family. Her mother and father were musicians, and her siblings were as well. And she began picking out melodies at the piano at age 4, and her mother noticed she was talented at music, so she had her study with a friend of hers who was a piano teacher, Mabel Payton, and she taught her by rote. And Diemer feels that this was really important in her development and getting really good at improvisation and composing and whatnot. So, so eventually she played both piano and organ. And organ, she was mostly self-taught. She had a few lessons and then she taught herself after that. And at age 13, she thought she wanted to be a composer and went on to, she went to Eastman for her undergrad and master's with William Gant, and then studied at Yale with Bernard Rogers and Howard Hanson for her DMA. So initially how I got involved with this composer, like I was saying, I learned Toccata for piano, which is a very famous extended technique piece among those type of pieces. It was recommended to me in undergrad by my teacher, and I wanted to learn it for a number of years, and then I finally got around to it, and I just learned that I really loved playing extended technique pieces. It was really something I wanted to look further into. And so my teacher and I talked about Diemer and how she was still living, and it might be really neat to go interview her. So I was like, okay. I emailed her. I wasn't real hopeful about what would come of it, but she was really friendly and really open to me coming to interview her. So I wasn't sure exactly where the project would lead, but I interviewed her at her home for 2 days in Santa Barbara, and she was very gracious, and I played some of her pieces for her feedback. I was playing that Toccata and then the Piano Sonata number 3, which also has some extended techniques. And so I just developed this relationship with her. So the commission began with an informal discussion that we had, and we were talking about the Piano Sonata number 3, and how she had written it for a pianist that asked her to write it, and then this pianist really didn't like the piece, and it was a really unusual experience for her, and she was just kind of baffled with this experience, so we were kind of, just sort of laughing at that, and I said, well, you can write me a piece anytime, I would love it, and it kind of was born of that casual conversation. So after my lecture recital that I gave, I emailed her and I said, hey, remember when we talked about, writing that piece? And she was like, oh, of course, I'll write a piece for you. And, what kind of piece do you want it to be? We kind of talked about like a lyrical nocturne sort of piece, and then all of a sudden she's like, I'm gonna write you a toccata. And I was okay with that because I didn't really have a specific occasion in mind or a specific style. Some people might, want something really, something to a T that they ask for, but I was happy with getting something that she just kind of came up with for me. So that we started talking in December 2011. She completed the piece February 2012, and then along the way, I took a while to get it up to snuff, and I recorded it at a festival in 2013 in the summer. So I felt good about that recording. I'm like kind of a perfectionist, so I waited a while to send her one, and so I sent her that, and she was very complimentary. And then we met in person. I drove my brother out to LA, he was moving there, and so I was able to go to Santa Barbara again, and I played it for her, and she gave me some dynamic ideas, like some ideas about the dynamic scheme that I could change, and so I was really, that was really helpful. And then my official premiere was my DMA solo recital, November 14th, 2015. And I got it for the very nice price of $50. She really didn't want me to pay her anything, but I kind of insisted, and she said, how about $50? So, which is, I've learned not, it's pretty unusual. So, Toccata for Amanda is the piece that I ended up with, and she has the subtitle of Homage to the Minimalist and Antonio Vivaldi. And she calls it a lighthearted tour de force. And she always says she was taking my technique into account, and she thinks like I had an exuberance to my playing, so that matched nicely with the piece. It just has perpetual motion. It continues and continues through the whole thing. No real moments of slow moments or extremely lyrical ones. There's a little bit in the middle, but so there's no use of extended techniques, this makes it the first piece of hers I played without extended techniques, being pieces that you play inside of the piano, that you use the piano in non-traditional ways. She uses the minimalist technique of remaining on one harmony long enough to be able to enjoy it and fully absorb it. And she's been influenced heavily by Steve Reich, Philip Glass, and John Adams. She mentioned she'd listened to Steve Reich and Philip Glass in person, and I really hear the John Adams in it, so I'll have to see what you think about it. So it has loosely a key center of B flat. She doesn't use any key signatures. This gives her the freedom to move wherever she wants to. She can change keys when she wants to and change harmonies. She arrives at new harmonies moving chromatically, and some third relation to getting back to where she wants to go. And she lingers on some dissonant harmonies. She builds a lot of suspense. You'll see it, the more exciting parts, like just staying on these dissonant harmonies, and then she moves to a more comfortable one that you're more familiar with from earlier in the piece. And though it can be dissonant, very dissonant at times, it just remains really lighthearted and fun and not really dark in mood or anything like that. So it just really shows her fun, lighthearted personality. So the minimalist techniques, she uses repetition of patterns, harmonies, and she repeats sections quite a few times. Again, dwelling with the sonorities for a longer amount of time, just to kind of relish that. She's mentioned that she doesn't like necessarily the trend of with serialism, like going from harmony to harmony, not having really time to enjoy different ideas. So there's not many dynamic markings in the score, so that leaves some freedom for the performer. And again, Wright, Glass and Adams, she's written she's written at least one piece that has John Adams' name in it, and I'm going to play a little bit of that for you, and then a John Adams piece that it reminds me of, and then I'll play the piece for you. So this is her violin concerto called John Adams' Light. You can just hear the repeated rhythmic ideas and the little cells, and it's moving up by a step or by half step, and just kind of all the ideas building on each other, changing slightly each couple of measures. So you'll see some characteristics like that in my piece that she wrote. So, and then I heard this piece a long time ago, and it's just certain parts of Toccata for Amanda always remind me of it. So I just want to play a sample of that. Short ride in a fast machine. That's just a sample, and you'll hear in the left hand when I play the Toccata for Amanda, you'll hear some of those repeated patterns accompanying. So, then characteristics of Vivaldi in Toccata for Amanda, again, repetition of patterns. certain intervals that I've noticed in the piece she told me about that influence her, which is the Bach-Vivaldi organ concerto in A minor. Certain repeated intervals going down or up. Remaining with the harmonies longer, as she said, time to relish and meditate on gestures and ideas. So one more sample soundbite here. Some things in the left hand and the Diemer remind me of that, as well as the runs that you'll hear, some of the virtuosic runs. So that was the piece she told me of Vivaldi's that she had in mind. So I'm going to go ahead and play the Diemer for you, and if my assistant could come and turn the pages for me. Okay, so, and I had forgotten to mention some of the, especially the end, it reminds me of like a grotesque version of a Baroque piece or a Vivaldi piece, like the aesthetic, the direction of the phrase, but then it adds all this fun dissonance. So, okay, so here's our next composer, Anthony Green. He's with us on Skype right now. And I just remembered as I was talking about Diemer that I forgot to include the biographical information on the PowerPoint about Anthony. So Anthony is a former CU student. He came here for the DMA program. This is a picture of us in the Netherlands in 2013. So I'll say a little bit what I remember from Anthony's bio. He grew up in Providence, Rhode Island. He showed some promise when he was about 5 years old. Musically, he was able to reproduce some phrases that his kindergarten teacher played on the piano. So his teacher told his parents, like, you know, you have some talent here. And when he was 10, he started in lessons, and his teacher helped him with some theory as well, and she encouraged him to enroll in some chamber music camps where he was able to compose, and he continued composing through high school, and went to BU for his undergrad, and New England Conservatory for his master's, and here for DMA. And originally was a piano major, but it was a double major, composition and piano, but he decided to focus solely on composition. And that's sort of similar to Diemer as well. She got really, really good in her master's, considered becoming a concert pianist, but decided she wanted to spend the time composing. So the piece that we collaborated on is called Fanatic. We came up with this project together in 2012. I was thinking up another project for my lecture recital, my second lecture recital, and I wanted to play a piece by him, and so we kind of came up with the idea, talk about the commission process and what that's like, because probably a lot of students don't do that. So anyway, we conducted a short interview, about like an hour interview in the car when we were driving to dinner one time, and he just asked me what I really like to play, what I don't like to play, how far into contemporary techniques I'm willing to go and interested to go. I have a little short excerpt. He saved the audio from the interview, so I have a little excerpt from that to show you in a minute. The original name of the piece was Fanatic to See, and that was supposed to be a title, or supposed to be a play on fantasy. So it just eventually shortened it to Fanatic, and it's based on the idea of oscillation being the fan, and obsession, which like the obsessed fan, fanatic. Composed it in between 2013 and 2015 in the Netherlands and Greece toward the end. So, and I got to pay $0 for this commission, which is, I feel very fortunate. So here's just a short little clip of the audio, and he originally was thinking about electronics, an electronic piece, and so we didn't end up doing that, but you'll hear there's some similarities in what he is talking about that we did end up doing. So,
Hi,
sorry, it's from the car.
Green, talking with Amanda Setlik. How you doing?
I'm doing great.
Awesome. Okay, it's not gonna be like this. All right. So you're like 90% sure that this is still a go?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Because I don't want to like have you learn a piece and write a piece, and then it's not gonna happen. You know, I feel like. So we had talked about my ideas for pieces, and you really excited about the electronic piece that involves more theatrics rather than playing.
Yeah, so like remind me what all of the ideas were.
Okay, so the first idea, if I can remember, was to do something that was completely inside the piano.
Right.
Not necessarily prepared, but with external objects. The second idea was the electronic piece, and then the third idea was, so I have this type of notation where you take a little segment that's within a measure and you repeat it, but you vary the rhythm.
Okay.
And what ends up happening is you create all of these different textures. Well, you create this one texture that's kind of shimmery.
Okay.
And when you apply it to piano, there's all sorts of like possibilities. And I wanted to write a piece that could extract those possibilities. It's kind of hard for me to describe it.
That sounds really cool too.
Yeah, I would have to play it for you to give you the full effect.
So I like that idea, and I like the electronic piece idea.
Okay.
And I like the idea of some theatrics, but like, I don't want them to be like, oh, well, she's not really, doing anything.
Well, here's the thing with the electronic piece. It's actually much harder than it'll probably come off, but I think it'll be just as rewarding.
So, though we didn't end up with an electronic piece, some of the ideas he's talking about are what I do have in my piece and in his piece for me. And those being that the one pianist can play it any number of different times or any number of different ways. And then if you put it in the hands of another pianist, then it can be completely different because of these repeated sections. And you see, I put an example up here of the opening, and you see these dotted lines here. And so those are the sections that are repeated in the same order, but this tempo can be varied, and the amount of times can be varied. And so it leaves a relative amount of freedom for the performer. So then the theatrical elements he was talking about, he has some interesting extended techniques that are vocal. So with the fan idea, the blowing, the heavy breathing, you'll see that audibly blow right there. And so that's the one of the ideas, the fan one, and then later on in the piece, I have to execute a vocal fry. So, which is when you do the like that. So I didn't include it. You'll see that in the piece when I project it. So, and then at times, another theatrical aspect is directed unsteady tempo. So I have these fast runs, but they're supposed to be kind of unsteady and kind of crazy and insane. And so, because I'm obsessed with some celebrity that I'm trying to chase. And dramatic page turns, there's like a big, I'm supposed to turn it very loudly at one point and then turn it very softly at another point. So lots of different possibilities. And then that doesn't even include what you could do with facial expressions. So, which is something that he said I could experiment with, and not something that he's directing in the score. So he does use a tone row and a matrix, and he mentions, I was going to read his introduction. So here's a short little description. The main kernels of Fanatic are the concepts of obsession and oscillation. Using the double meaning of the word fan, moving back and forth, oscillation, and a person obsessed with a celebrity obsessed fan. This piece attempts to manipulate pitch oscillations in a rather obsessive manner. In its entirety, there are 3 parts: an unsteady, unfocused introduction, a schizophrenic, single-pitched, obsessed transition, and a bombastic, unbalanced statement with a thin coda. The pitch material is derived from an extremely constricting, obsessive row, one that leaves precious little room for variation. This is my first experience working with such a tight row, and attempting to extract variety from it was a welcome, albeit difficult challenge. Fanatic was commissioned by and lovingly dedicated to Amanda Setlik Jones. So he mentions the intentional restricting qualities of the row, and he suggested like dividing it into the tetrachords and just observing like there's like 0 to 11 and then 5 to 6, the semitones, and then the middle one was a fully diminished seventh, and then the outer one had also like some semitones in it. So he wanted to use a lot of half steps, making it hard to manipulate into different shapes for himself. So then the free ostinato notation is the one that I was describing with the dotted lines and repeating what's in between the dotted lines. And he's been developing this in his pieces since 2007 was the first one that he used it in. So again, like I was saying, the notes between the dotted lines are played for a specific amount of time at the desired tempo of the performer. The order of the pitches has to remain the same. So this is a little bit different than some other contemporary techniques like this. And and I grabbed a quote from another preface of another piece that he wrote, which is the idea that a collection of instruments can create one sonority that constantly changes color. And it's not exactly the same with piano, but with solo piano, but you can change it. You know, if I feel like playing really fast one day, it can be different, or if I feel like changing the dynamic can be different, and then someone else would be, you know, played a completely different way. So comparisons of Toccata for Amanda and Fanatic, they're quite different. The openings, you can just look at the beginning of the piece and say, okay, you know, Diemer's is quite traditional looking, and you can really necessarily tell, other than the repetitiveness, that it's necessarily a very contemporary piece. With Greens, you can look at it right away and say, okay, this is really different than anything I've ever seen. I took a while to start learning it because I was a little intimidated just looking at it. So let's see. So, and then obviously Green uses the 12-tone techniques. It's not completely serialized, but Diemer's does not. It's quite tonal. It has dissonance, but it's overall quite tonal. And Diemer uses the minimalist techniques, while Green's piece is serial. Green's piece is outwardly emotional and theatrical. It's a lot to do with what you portray and the mood and the suspense. And Diemer's is not necessarily theatrical, so it doesn't have that component. And finally, Green's piece has unusual extended techniques like the blowing and the vocal fry, and this time this piece of Diemer's does not. So when I set out to get this first commission written, I didn't know a lot about the process, and it turned out I didn't really need to all that much because it was a pretty casual setup and arrangement. But if anyone wanted to get started and know a little bit more about the commission process, you can look on the New Music USA website. There's a brochure that tells you anything from what is a commission to where to get funding, what are typical fees, rights of the commissioner, and you can go on the American Composers Forum. There's much of the same information, and I found this info that for a typical concert piece under 10 minutes, it's $2,000 to $4,500, and this is from 2009. This is a figure from 2009, so I think I got pretty lucky with getting both of these pieces for almost nothing. So when you do have a piece commissioned for you, it's important to follow through and with interacting with the composer, and especially because that's such a privilege to be able to get inside their head and talk about, why did they choose this and not that, and what was going through your head when you composed this. So from the American Composers Forum website, I took this quote: "Commissioning is a process. From the moment of inspiration to the exciting premiere performance, there are decisions to be made, ideas to explore, and memorable moments when the commissioner, composer, and performers collaborate to give birth to a new work." And I think this is absolutely true. I think it's very important to work closely with the composer and ask if you have questions. Don't just go along thinking, "Oh, I'd really like to ask this, but I'm too embarrassed," or whatever. They want you to talk to them about their piece, and it really makes them excited that somebody is interested in their piece. So, and then if you need something to be rewritten, you should ask them. They probably don't know that it's not possible to play. I didn't have this experience really, because both of my composers that I worked with were pianists. So I didn't really have that issue, luckily. So, and communicate again about the premiere date. And I kind of had in mind that I wanted to do Diemer's piece at my solo recital, and I asked her, is that okay, or should, since I played it somewhere else, should that be the official commission? And since it was less formal, she was fine with me doing it at the lecture, or at the solo recital eventually. So I'd send them recordings, send them lots of recordings. They love it. So without further ado, I'm going to play Fanatic for you, and this is going to be the official premiere. So very exciting.
He's spraying. Wait right there, you can see.
Is he still on?
I know, less than
commissioning process is not particularly a difficult one when you know the protocols, and it doesn't. Once you get into it, and once you've had a piece commissioned, it doesn't seem that daunting, but it can if you haven't done it before. So it's really a wonderful way, I think, to have music tailored to you. Diemer liked my technique, so she was able to compose a piece that was tailored to that. So, and if you don't have a relationship with the composer already, like I did with Anthony, we were friends at CU, but you might develop one, as I did with Diemer, which is something really great for a performing artist. And you could have other pieces written for you in the future, potentially, or become a specialist in the composer's work. So, and I think that commissioning is one of the most special processes and experiences that we can have as performing artists. And my hope is just to inspire other people to try to break into it, and especially students. So I hope you enjoyed my lecture on Emma Lou Diemer and Anthony Green. Thank you. So, does anyone have any questions for me? Any of my committee?
Amanda,
Yes.
what are you doing? It's been a while. She's I'm a singer. It's wonderful accompanist. I wanted to tell you that. Wonderful to work with, patient, and just right there, But now that you have this knowledge and everything, what do you have planned for yourself for the future concerning your music?
Yeah. Well, I actually I meant to mention this in the lecture as well, but I do have a goal of making some recordings of Diemer's solo music, because I think she's 88 years old, and this is something I've really been wanting to do. Once I get finished with my responsibilities here, and so that's something exciting that I would like to do. And I really I kind of love the contemporary music scene, so I would like to get into that more.
Very exciting.
Thanks.
Do you plan to take it to Hollywood?
I don't know.
You never know.
I've got family there now, so.
There you go. Yeah, keep real versatile.
We'll see.
You can have recordings of just music written for Amanda Setlik.
Yeah, that's what you were
If you just
saying.
keep doing this.
That would be really awesome. Yeah, I'd love to play something by you someday.
Absolutely.
You gave me some music a while back.
$25.
It's 25.
Yeah.
Amanda, can I ask you a question about Anthony's piece?
Yeah.
In Fanatic, how free was it that you could? I saw you doing a lot. You were taking a lot of liberties with how many repeats or how fast you would do something. I even saw you take liberties with 15 and AVA and 15 MA. Did you see okay with that?
So the part with the 15 and 8s, that was not intentional. I'm still kind of like learning how to play it that quickly, and for whatever reason, I like the octaves always confuse me when I'm reading music. But yeah, so I'm still working on that. But as far as the liberties as with repeating, up until like yesterday, I was a little confused on that portion, and I thought that I was supposed to repeat the sections that were in the brackets. So I had to adjust that, just like the past couple of days. Like I was thinking I'm supposed to be repeating this. So, but in reality, I'm supposed to be repeating this, everyone. So, and he said, like, it's totally up to you. You can not repeat it. You can repeat it as many times as you want. So it's totally up to the performer, but then he has the time estimations. And I turned on my stopwatch because I was going to watch that, but I wasn't able to really do that. So that was a little approximate. But.
Can you go to the page with all the repeated A's?
Yeah. Yeah.
Go to that page. I'm curious. The more, while we're listening to do this, I wonder if the time signatures of the rests need to be there. Do they?
I'm not sure because.
Do
you want to ask him?
No, I know he's going to say yes. I know. But I'm wondering, if it's approximate and by eye, you can nail this, right?
Right. Yeah, and I find that, I tried to count it, but I find that I'm approximating a lot. So it might change as I'm, working on it.
The more you play,
So,
you might think in 7/16 going to 3/4, maybe.
Right, yeah. I tried to keep track, but it was really hard to.
But nobody else is counting, so
right.
So it sounded right.
Yeah, what he told me about that part was, figure it out and then just kind of relax and do it how it goes. Yeah, however, go with the flow. Yeah, so.
And all the clusters, you got 3 or 4 pages of this.
Yeah.
Right? Have you played any Messiaen at all?
I have never played Messiaen. No, that's another one I'd like to.
Were these to the hand or were they really, really? How were they in terms of difficulty to catch the shapes?
They were difficult. I think it gets a little more hairy, like toward the end, like that part that we were looking at, So I'm not completely convinced that we don't need to talk about rewriting that. We kind of discussed it, but yeah, it is kind of, they are kind of awkward, even for, even being, both of us being pianists. And I don't think he was able to play, I don't think he played through it a lot when he was recording, he mentioned, and he, right away when he gave me the finished piece, he was like, we might need to rewrite those. So we just didn't really end up having time yet, so. Yeah.
That was pretty spectacular.
I might have missed it but the blowing,
Mm-hmm.
is that into the original, or has somebody else?
I can't think of anything. Do you know of anything else that's been a part of another piece? I've never seen it before. So the idea was, I talked about it a little bit before. It's Fanatic. It's called Fanatic, and he's using the double meaning of fan being like the air and the oscillation, and then like a crazy obsessed fan who's tracking down the celebrity, and so that's where all the instability comes from.
I remember some blowing in Carter Pan's summer music.
Oh yeah.
Did you do that? Yeah.
Yeah, but it wasn't. But the pianist Andrew played that piece. You weren't, I don't think, doing that, were you?
No.
But there were all the other players had to make animal sounds. Yeah.
That's great.
I'm sure there are piano solos that have the performer even speak. You know what I'm saying? Or hit the piano.
That's one of the things we had talked about as a possibility. He's like, "Are you okay with speaking during your piece?" I was like, "Yeah." I was pretty much okay with anything. So.
Did Anthony give you a specific celebrity that he's obsessing over?
No. Do you guys want to ask him anything? He's on Skype here. You want to unmute it? You won't see him because we're just using audio for him.
Oh, okay. Okay. Anthony, can you hear us?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, turn it up a little.
Yeah, we can hear you. I mean, this is about as loud as you can.
So, just repeat your question.
Anthony, this is Carter. Hi, we just heard a wonderful premiere of your piece, and I just have to ask you one question. Is there anything specific to the program of this piece? Are you obsessing over any specific celebrity?
Do you want me to put it on the audio?
And
No, not at the moment.
Not at the moment. Okay, well, that's funny because
Yeah, go ahead.
yeah.
If it's any consolation, the last time I returned to the Netherlands from the States, I saw Nina Flowers at the airport, and she's a drag queen that works in Denver, and she was on RuPaul's Drag Race, and I was really happy.
That's good.
Did you guys hear?
Yeah. Nina Flowers.
Yeah, he met Nina Flowers, and
At the airport. Okay.
she's a drag queen.
In Chicago.
Oh, in Chicago. Okay.
Oh wow. Okay. I guess so. I guess you can sort of come up with the. I don't know if you need to. You need
I could have my own celebrity. I have to think about that.
Eddie Izzard.
Yeah.
What?
But I did want to speak about the blowing.
You know what, Anthony? I'm gonna put you on the audio so everyone can hear you. There you go. Yeah, I'm gonna plug you in here. Okay, try.
Hello.
Oh yeah, that's perfect.
Okay, you can go.
Oh, yes. So someone asked about the blowing in the piece, and I wanted to mention that when I was attending the chamber music camp as a 16-year-old, I played a piece by John Deep, who's a composer from Colorado, but he's also a double bassist in the New York Phil. And that piece was based on Lady Chatterley's Lover, and I had to play Clifford Chatterley, and I had to blow and speak, and so did all of the other instrumentalists. So a lot of my theatrical ideas come from that piece that I played when I was 16.
Thank you.
Oh, that's cool.
Anyone else have a question for the composer while he's here? Here.
I have another question for you.
Yeah.
Why do you think this concept of commissioning composers is unusual enough for you to give a lecture about it?
Well,
Seeing as how we have a whole department full of them, just in this
Right.
school alone.
I guess I was more referring to reaching out to composers who are, well established in the world, and like Diemer. It was kind of intimidating to reach out to her, like not knowing her, and I, even when I went there, I was like really scared to go interview her because I didn't know she was gonna be like a nice person, or that was so that was something that was kind of hard I had to get out of my comfort zone to do, but it turns out it was really worth it, and I've gotten to I played a chamber piece with a violinist as a friend of hers this summer in Denver, and just gotten a lot of nice opportunities. I've been able to play in this Dairy Center series because of playing the Diemer works. There was like a women composer series or special concert, and so I just think it's different it's a little bit different than what most solo pianists do, I think, around here at CU. So it's been really fun.
We have to wrap this up.
Okay.
There's a band that's in here at 5:30.
Oh, okay.
I'm so sorry to be the bearer of that news.
Well, thanks for being with us, Anthony.
Yay, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.